Olá a todos, é um prazer receber nessa segunda edição do Entrevista CEPAL o grande historiador israelense radicado no Reino Unido, professor na Universidade de Exeter, Ilan Pappe. Ilan Pappe, it's a great pleasure to receive you here at the University of São Paulo, at the Center for Palestine Studies, e receber a convite nosso do CEPAL para realizar essa entrevista o professor Salen Nasser, da FGV, do canal próprio Selective Blindness, cegueira seletiva. Salen, muito obrigada pelo convite, é um prazer recebê-lo para essa entrevista.
Sou eu quem agradece, é uma grande honra. Obrigado mesmo.
E eu queria só começar dizendo, antes de passar a palavra para o Salen, que a entrevista vai ser em inglês, por motivos óbvios. O professor Ilan Pappe vai responder as perguntas em inglês. E eu queria só mostrar os livros dele que estão publicados no Brasil. Ele tem 26 livros publicados em vários idiomas. Esse livro foi o primeiro publicado no Brasil, A Limpeza Étnica da Palestina, uma pesquisa muito importante, né, que realmente mexeu muito com o campo da historiografia palestina, trazendo novos paradigmas e compreensões da história palestina. Está traduzido em 17 línguas, incluindo o português. Foi traduzido pela editora Sanderman. Depois foi traduzido e publicado 10 mitos sobre Israel. Continua com uma procura muito grande, tem também uma pesquisa extremamente importante para entender a história israelo e palestina ao mesmo tempo. E o quarto livro publicado foi A Maior Prisão do Mundo, recém-publicado esse ano, junto com uma brevíssima história da Palestina, pela mesma editora Elefante. Então, aqui a gente tem a Sanderman, a editora Tabla, a editora Elefante, e eu trago também só mais um livro que está em português, mas português de Portugal, que é História da Palestina Moderna. Sai um pouco caro para comprar, porque tem que ser importado de Portugal, mas está em português. Então, os nossos alunos aqui na USP usam bastante esse livro, assim como usam muitos outros livros também. Então, it's really a great pleasure to receive you here for this interview at the center.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to see you both and be with you. Thank you.
Obrigado, professor Arlene. Muito obrigado por me ter. Professor Ilan, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure to have you in Brazil and to meet you in person. I would like to start by saying that I agree with Edward Said when he said that you were the foremost intellectual working on the Palestinian question. I believe he was right, and it still holds true.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you a few questions touching on points that are not at the center stage in these days when we are living through a genocide. So everybody wants to know about Gaza, about the genocide, about the actual present situation. But there are some things that you have said in other channels and other places, and that I would like you to deepen a little bit in the discussion. The first of them is one idea that has provoked reactions in the world, around the world, that is the idea that Israel is nearing its end. So some people have reacted to this statement by thinking that maybe this was something that was going to happen anytime now. But I would like you to go a little bit more into the details. What does it mean for us to say that Israel as a project is coming to an end? Is it the end of Zionism? Is it the end of a colonial project? Is it the end of a state? Is it the end of the Jewish presence in the Middle East? How do you see this end, other than the time it will take? But what exactly does this end mean?
Yeah, thank you for having me once again. I was talking about first of all about the beginning of the end. So I can see indicators of a process that is only in the making. So it's not the end, but there are indications that we are beginning here a process or a set of processes that can lead to the disintegration of the state or the undermining of the regime. Of course, it's very difficult to predict the exact details, but what I mean by this, that there are almost two possibilities here. One I'm quite confident about. The other one I'm hoping about, which is not the same thing. What I'm confident about is that the social implosion inside Israel, its economic crisis, its international isolation, its very complicated and difficult relationship with young Jewish communities around the world, and it's continued, what for me is quite clear, it will continue to have aggressive policies that would alienate not only the Palestinians and the Arab world, I do believe would also make it very difficult for those Arab countries that now think that normalization is possible. I think even they would find it very difficult to maintain that kind of attitude towards Israel. And of course, given the fact that public opinion is important, I do believe that also the process, and this is the process I'm talking that I believe is happening, not one I'm hoping for, there will be also change, I think, in the European policy towards Israel. And I may even say I'm not sure that the American unconditional support for Israel would continue, if not because of a change in the regime in America, mainly a more progressive Democratic Party coming to power. Again, not tomorrow, not the day after. Or even if there is a more Republican orientation, given the fact that Israel is going to be a huge economic liability, even that kind of American regime might find it difficult to sustain Israel. So, for all these reasons, I feel confident that I'm right in saying that these processes of disintegration are happening, and they create chaos. They create inability of Israel, I think, to properly defend itself. If we're looking at Gaza, one aspect of Gaza we don't talk about is the fact that every time the Israelis were trying to have a real confrontation with the Palestinian guerrillas, they are not winning. They are very good at bombing everything from the air. And the same happened with Hezbollah in Lebanon. After all, the Israeli army had to withdraw with its tail between its legs in the summer of 2000 once it started to fight directly the Hezbollah. And we're talking in both cases of guerrilla groups that are not armies. They don't have air force. They don't have tanks. They definitely don't have great generals and strategies, and yet Israel find it very, very difficult to defeat it. So I think this kind of increased insecurity on the borders inside, I also do believe that the Palestinians in the West Bank will not remain quiet, especially if Israel would try to impose on them the same policies it does in the Gaza Strip. So I'm quite confident there will be a third, maybe we should call it the fourth intifada. Maybe October was the third intifada. This would be a very unsafe, destabilized state that would push a lot of its elite outside of it. So maybe on paper the state will still be there, but I don't see it as a sustainable project. What I wish for, and what I'm worried, and that's why I even want to talk to the Israelis about it, is that this is not my wish for Israel, neither for the Jews or the Palestinians. What I wish for is to try and convince people that since the disintegration is inevitable, maybe we could make this process less violent. And maybe we can build, and this is, of course, a mission we should ask the Palestinians to take upon themselves, to build an alternative. And the alternative for me, is a very clear one, but much less assured one. So I rely on what I hear, especially the younger Palestinian generation hoping for. I share these hopes for a democratic a state from the river to the sea, a regime that respects equality, that reconnects Palestine to the Arab world. All this I hope will happen. I try to believe that it will happen because I'm an optimist. But I'm much more confident on the processes that will create the conditions for building something new. If we fail to build something new, we will not stop the old one from crumbling, but we can look at Syria and see what happens if there is no clear alternative to a regime. You fall into years and years of chaos and bloodshed.
Yeah, it's much. Thank you very much. It's much clearer now, especially the time frame that is something more on the longer side, no?
Absolutely.
But I wanted to ask you, still in relation to this question, is before the 7th of October and before even the realization that Israel was now in a process of genocidal war against Gaza, it was almost impossible for us in the, let's say, mainstream debate to affirm that Israel was indeed a colonial project, right? You had to mince your words and to measure your, because if you said that, it's like you are putting doubts on the legitimacy of the state of Israel. Right. So, but now people are speaking openly about the fact that it is from the origin a colonial project. And in this sense, I would like to ask you if you think that there is a kind of a historical inevitability for the colonial project to see its end, right? To fail at the end. Of course, we know cases in which it has not failed in the sense that they took the land and they destroyed the local population. But is there something specific about this case, about the Palestinian case, about maybe the Middle Eastern context, you know, the history of the Arab peoples, that make this colonial project fatally, inevitably failed one?
Yes, first of all, I think the more precise definition is of settler colonialism, which is different from classical colonialism. And I do believe that Zionism was a settler colonial movement and created a settler colonial state. And you're absolutely right. When we say this, we are immediately attacked. It's very curious. You can say openly that the United States is a settler colonial state. You can say that Brazil is a settler colonial state, and you can say that Canada is a settler colonial state, and nobody would call you an anti-Christian. But if you dare to say that also Israel is a settler colonial state, you're immediately branded as an anti-Semite. But we have to not to cave into this because we are saying it as academics, not as activists. We're saying it on the basis of our academic analysis. Now, I think there is, you're absolutely right, some settler colonial projects unfortunately succeeded. And even if they did not eliminate every native indigenous person, they did take so much of the land and killed so much of the people, and so much time has passed since they arrived as settlers that their struggles, and indigenous people are still struggling in Chile, in Brazil, in Mexico, in Canada, and so on. But their struggle is not similar to the Palestinian struggle because it's about recognition, it's about compensation, it's about justice, definitely. Zionism is different in two ways. One, it occurred very late in the day in the age of colonialism. And therefore it met a society that itself was already part of the age of nationalism, which is parallel to the age of colonialism. Many of the other settler colonial projects were did occur or had occurred when nationalism was still not a very common phenomenon. People did not define themselves as nationalist groups. In fact, if we accept Benedict Anderson's theory of imagined communities, it is the settlers of Spain and Portugal that actually were the first one to create nationalism because they had to explain why, as Spanish and Portuguese people, they are different from the original Spanish. And there's something in that. It's not a full explanation of nationalism, but it's not a bad one. Anyway, so Zionism comes in very late in the day. So that's one difference. And therefore, it meets a much more politicized, a much more nationalized a community that does not give in to these policies. Secondly, there's something about the colonialism in the Arab world which is very different from the rest of the world. The colonialism that arrived in the Mashriq, in the Eastern Mediterranean, where Palestine is, what the Europeans call the Levant, was actually never fully colonized. The imperial powers arrived there after the First World War, when Arab nationalism was already a recognized phenomenon, where people were already aware of their collective rights, and therefore, actually, they were never called colonies. They were called mandatory states. And already, even if there was no genuine French or British wish to allow full independence, it was not a proper colony. So already there, that created a difference. And the only proper other settler colonial project we have in the Arab world and North Africa is Algeria. So if we look at Algeria, and we can learn a lot from Algeria, settler colonialism failed in Algeria. Eventually it failed. And I think people in the Arab world know it. And that's why for the Palestinians, the Algerian model is very, very important. So I think for all these reasons, the settler colonial project of Zionism, both in its historical timing, in its geographical location, is an abnormal creature that was imposed on the Arab world, was imposed on the Palestinian, and that is a ticking bomb inside it. We don't see it because, for all kinds of reasons we might discuss, there is an alliance that believes that this impractical project serves the interests of different actors on the international scene, but it is sustained not by legitimacy or morality; it's sustained by force, and there is a limit to force. Yeah.
I will follow up with one other question about this. Let's say the factors that weaken Israel with the passage of time. But since we spoke about nationalism, I'm gonna step over it and then come back.
Okay.
There is one thing that impresses me much is that we usually think about sectarianism, the idea that Arabs and Orientals in general have sectarian differences that puts them against each other for the longest time. We always think about, I never believed in it as an explanation for chaos and conflict in the Middle East. But, I tend to read it as, let's say, an instrument of the divide and conquer strategies of the West, no? But there is some precision here that I would like to see whether you can help me see the light. That is that even if we don't accept it as an explanation for conflict, we can feel that ethnicity and religious ideas or religious beliefs are still very important in certain regions of the world, much more than they are in the West. So they still help us understand society, politics, and this is also the case in the Middle East.
Absolutely.
So sometimes when we criticize a process like, for example, the Sykes-Picot agreement and then the mandates, we speak of artificial boundaries that were created by the West, and usually we follow up with the second part of the criticism, that is, it is artificial because we have separated ethnicities that were together, and we have separated religious groups that were together, and we put together in places that they should not coexist, people from different ethnicities and from different. So sometimes we feel the need almost to jump to a conclusion that maybe the best thing would be to have exclusive ethnic and religious states, which would, by the way, favor Israel as a legitimation process, right?
Absolutely.
So how can we escape this trap, but at the same time understand the real facts that ethnicity and religion still matter
Yeah.
in the region, even though they used to always live as a mosaic of diverse societies. No, how can we find
Yeah.
this balance?
Definitely, this is a great challenge. And I think what was unique about the mosaic before the intervention of the colonialist powers and before Zionism became a force to reckon with, that these identities were ethnocultural. They were not ethnopolitical.
Hmm. Hmm.
And because they were ethnocultural, and of course one should not romanticize it and one should not idealize it, nonetheless, the exception was tension,
Hmm.
not the rule.
Hmm.
The rule was actually a genuine coexistence, interest in one another, helping one another, and so on. And I think that thinking about the ethnic groups in the Middle East as especially in the Mashriq and Eastern Mediterranean as ethnoculture rather than
Hmm.
ethno-national one
Hmm. Hmm.
is something that I think would benefit people. And I know I have these discussions with my Kurdish friends who are, even those who are pro-Palestinian,
Hmm.
they still would like to think about Kurdish nationalism and
Nationalism.
ethno-nationalism. But I think even they begin
Hmm.
to question whether
Hmm.
this is really necessary. I mean, wouldn't a fair representation for the Kurds in Syria
Hmm.
even respect to their achievements, which are very impressive,
Yes.
their attitude to gender,
Hmm.
their lack
Hmm.
of religious fanaticism, brilliant
Hmm.
attributes that could
Hmm.
help
Yes,
Syria,
yes,
no doubt of it.
absolutely.
Isn't that more important than having a Kurdish state in the north of Syria?
Yeah.
And I think some of them are beginning to think
Hmm.
like this. So I think it's somewhere to work towards this ethno cultural. Of course, you don't ever return in history to the same thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. So you take into account the new reality and you navigate between the new reality and the important legacy from the past. I always like to say that in order to deal with this issue, and I will come back to the sectarianism in a minute. In order to deal with this issue, I always say that the mistake for many people in the Arab world, and especially in the Mashriq, was to go to the European supermarket of ideas,
Uh-huh.
to think that there you can buy the solution. No, the solution is in the supermarket of the past.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you take it as it is. You don't want
Hmm.
the Ottoman
Hmm.
Empire back. But there's something about the way the Ottomans allowed
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
these ethnocultural groups to coexist that is worth looking at.
Hmm.
Um, and I think you're absolutely right. What turned this ethnocultural sectarianism into a malad, into a very dangerous phenomenon, is the meddling in their affairs by the West,
Hmm. Hmm.
arming the people, pitting one group against the other. It began with a mandate system that preferred
Yeah.
one group over the others,
Yes.
created a terrible legacy. Some of the regimes that took over, such as the Assad regime, continued this idea that instead of respecting the mosaic, is to highlight the groups in the
Hmm.
mosaic
Hmm.
that were more vulnerable and therefore would be more loyal to
Yeah.
the regime.
Yeah.
Similar thing happened in Iraq with very negative and cruel consequences. But we should not take this determinist view. I mean, there is in the area the ability, I think, to rethink about it.
Hmm.
Also, Jews in Palestine, to my mind, in the future have to accept
Yeah.
to be an ethnocultural group, not a national group. Uh, and um, and this is something that if people will not accept it theoretically,
Hmm.
I think reality on the ground
Well,
would force them to go in that
yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
And I would just add, of course, I don't think anyone in the Arab world, apart from very militant Islamists, say everything from the West is bad. People respect the Enlightenment its ideas of individual freedoms, they might as well been thrown into the mix of building a better society. But the foundation, to my mind, has to be based on the legacy of the past, not imported from the West.
Please, Arlene.
Yes. Do you think that when Saidi Nusseibeh wrote What is a Palestinian State Worth, it was some kind of idea related to this that he had in mind? Although I was a bit bothered by the book because he doesn't show how to arrive there, and he kind of conceives of maybe an acceptance for this kind of situation, but without full political rights.
Yeah.
So there was something very disturbing about his conclusions, but at the same time, I had the feeling that possibly this was a bit of what he had in mind when he thought about not having national rights as like the most important idea on the table.
Yeah, partly of this, I think what really motivated Sari in his book was the fear that if the Palestinians would continue to insist on national rights, they're not going to get the same support unless if they insist on human rights. Unfortunately, in both cases, it didn't work.
Yeah.
The world was not impressed when the Palestinians stressed human rights. It was not impressed when the Palestinians stressed civil rights, and it was not impressed when they stressed national rights. And so I think I can understand where he was coming from. And there's also someone like Professor Radakarmi. Also, they think that the idea was to convince Israel to allow the Palestinians in the West Bank to participate in the election, even with limited rights, in order to have better life. This could have worked if there was an Israeli partner for this. Even if I don't like the idea or do like the idea, it's a non-starter. I'm talking about something that differentiates between historical processes, which I believe are inevitable, and not all of them are positive. But they create different realities. But I think, yes, some of it was there. Some of it is there. Sari also reflects this historical fact that Palestinians, from the very beginning of the arrival of Zionist settlers, did not object of hosting Jews in Palestine, Jews who were refugees. What they objected to is the ideology of these refugees, that they have the right to the land and the Palestinians don't have to. Yes, I do think it's a contribution, but I think we are now even moving further than that. And another thing I think that is different, what I'm talking about, I don't think it can be just a Palestinian conversation.
Right.
I think it has to be a Mashriki conversation. It has to include the Eastern Mediterranean, at least the Eastern Mediterranean. Maybe I wouldn't go as far as Iraq, but I don't think you can talk about the future of Israel and Palestine without talking about the future of Lebanon, of Syria, and Jordan. We can, for the time being, I think we can exclude Egypt and Iraq, although they should be part of the story. But definitely, that organic part of the Arab world that was divided by Sykes-Picot, and in it, a Jewish state was thrown into it, needs to be restructured and redefined, so that most people who live there would feel at home. And I don't think either Zionism or the current nation states of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan provide enough solace and promise for all the people who live there. And you need to include as many people as you can to feel that they benefit from a political system. And this hasn't happened yet.
Now, coming back then to the fragilities of Israel, in a recent talk, I heard you say something about the rot in Israel being too deep. I would like you to expand a little bit on that. I have my own understanding of what this rot would be. It includes profound divisions within Israeli society and several kinds of divisions, religious, migratory, original cultural setups from where people have come, the local Jewish communities. But I would like to understand more about what is becoming rotten uh, besides the division or because of the division, right? Because one thing that seems to unite most of Israelis is radicalization of their position before Palestinians or in face of the Palestinian question. No? So, as we maybe could say about other societies that are also in the same process, no, of
Hmm.
being less inclusive, less tolerant, less. But we usually don't discuss this about Israel, or if we try to discuss it, we don't have access to the information here. At least, I never hear people speaking about what's going on inside Israel.
Yeah.
So to have you here is the the special opportunity to have this
Okay.
insider look.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. Um, well, first of all, it is an intra-Jewish uh, uh, um, rottenness, so to
Uh-huh.
speak.
Hmm.
This is not something the Palestinians have caused. Unfortunately, at least immediately, it will not affect the Palestinians. It will not change much in the relation between Israel and the Palestinians. It has to do with the inner contradiction of the idea that Judaism is not a religion but nationalism.
Hmm.
It begins
Hmm.
there. Uh, the Zionist movement was able to push aside this question by saying we need to be united against the enemies.
Hmm.
But there is a limit of how much you can use this excuse. And we saw it
Hmm.
when the position that, at least until the 1970s, used to be seen as marginal, lunatic even,
Hmm.
and therefore didn't bother most Israeli Jews, became very popular
Hmm.
and dominant. And this position of what does it mean to be a Jew in Israel uh, was born in the Jewish settlements in the West Bank, in what I call the state of Judea.
Judea.
And it was very marginal to begin with, and people didn't notice how much it influences the rest of Israel. And that particular state of Judea that became even stronger since Benjamin Netanyahu, in his 15 years of rule since he came to power for the second time in 2009, decided they are the best allies.
Hmm.
Since then, that particular view is even more clearly articulated today than it was articulated in the past. I can give you one example from a speech given by one of their leaders, which I think exemplifies the problem, the rot,
Uh-huh.
as I
Hmm.
would call it. He said, in the history of the Jewish people, we had two kinds of prophets. We had the more kind of junior prophets who dealt more with the material side of life, and they were very important to build the kingdom, to build an army, to build the foundation of the biblical state of David and Solomon. But then came the real prophets, not the junior one. And they understood what the junior prophet did not understand, that in order to sustain the achievement of the junior
Hmm. Hmm.
prophets, you need to be very pious. You have to be strict in the way you exercise everything in life,
Hmm. Hmm.
both to be merciless towards the Palestinians, merciless towards secular Jews,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
merciless to anyone who is not living according to our understanding of the Bible. The enemy is not just the Palestinians, the enemies are Jews who are not
Uh-huh.
behaving as they should because they are delaying the redemption.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
Now, when we heard these speeches in the 1970s, we laughed, we said, who cares about these people? Now, these are the gurus of the Minister of
Uh-huh.
Interior, the Minister of, also the Minister of
Uh-huh.
Interior,
Uh-huh.
the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Home Security,
Uh-huh.
and so on.
Hmm.
So it became a very important ideology. So the attitude of the state of Judea to what one probably can call the more liberal, secular Jews who are not liberal about the Palestinians, but secular
Yeah.
about their own life,
Health.
liberal life, is that they call them the Messiah's donkey. They brought the Messiah, and now they did their job, and they're expendable. They're expendable. So I think that this created a rift that is unbridgeable. And what the Israelis found to their great horrors, that even a traumatic event like the 7th of October, which really shook the Israeli society, traumatized it. And people said, okay, after that, probably we will be united, given what had been done to us. Even that did not help to bridge the gap. And then there are manifestation of this gap, which are another manifestation of rottenness. For instance, this group of people do not believe that the game of democracy, the very fragile game of democracy that Israel somehow succeeded in upholding for Jews at least, not for Palestinians, and gained it this idea that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, they don't believe in it. They don't believe it's Jewish. They don't believe it's necessary. In fact, they think that this is a fifth column, that it creates problem. So they want to cancel the Supreme Court. They want to cancel any democratic features of the Israeli society because they see them as a point of weakness. And to their great horror, the Israelis, who are still 45% of the population, do not know how to deal with them. And the reason they don't know how to deal with them is two reasons. One is that they don't have an alternative. They really don't have an. To say we want a Jewish democratic state, I agree with the right wing of Israel. There isn't such a thing, a Jewish democratic state. So at least I agree with them there. You can be either democratic or Jewish. You cannot be both. Right. Secondly, if you want a democracy, you have to work with the Palestinians. Comes back to Salen Nasser's book. You have to work with the Palestinians. If you really want a democratic state, the Palestinians are the most willing partners in the world you have for building a democracy. But they're too racist to do this. So they lose elections one after the other. They leave the countries in great numbers, and they don't know what to tell their children and the grandchildren, apart from the fact this will not be only a future where we will fight the Arabs and the Palestinians forever. Maybe it's a future where we'll fight each other. And that is rot. That is deep rot. It's and what the 7th of October did, it just shook the foundation that were already very shaky.
Well, thank you very much. I think you probably have somewhere else to be very soon.
Yes.
So I will end with this question, is that something else that we would not be able to say a few years ago was that there was a situation of apartheid in Israel, right? And the great human rights organizations did not dare to say it until very recently.
Yeah.
But when they said it finally, they said that there was a situation of apartheid that extended not only to the West Bank and to Gaza, but also to the Palestinians within Israel and to the Palestinians in the diaspora and to the Palestinians that are refugees around the world. So I would like you to tell us more about these Palestinians within Israel that also suffer this situation of apartheid or of differentiation or and because I think you also refer to them as the forgotten Palestinians. So let's remember them.
Let's unforget them.
Yes.
Let's unforget them. Yes, I think it's a very important group of people. Nowadays, there are about 2 million of them. And they are forgotten both by the Palestinians and the Israelis and the rest of the world. And in many ways, they are the future because they are the only Palestinians who know the Israelis not only as settlers and soldiers, they also know the Israelis as normal human beings with which they have normal relationship. And if there's any chance for reconciliation and building something together, it is because these Palestinians would say, there are other Israelis. They're not all the same. They're very important in this respect. And of course, they also know Hebrew. They understand the Israelis better than the rest of the Palestinians, and so on. They are a very important group, and their suffering is usually forgotten because unfortunately there is degrees of suffering, and those in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip are far worse than ever whatever they experience. Nobody can compare it, and yet they are victims of apartheid. As Desmond Tutu said, they are not victims of the same apartheid we had in South Africa. It's not as bad. Whereas he said the apartheid in the West Bank and Gaza Strip is far worse than the one. Now, it's important to explain a little bit about what they went through. When they became the Israeli citizens in 1949, they were put under military rule. Now, everybody in Palestine knows what military rule means after 1967, but people forget that the Palestinians inside Israel suffered from this rule before, between 48 and 66, and also there was a big massacre because of this rule. It's true that the military rule was lifted after 1967, and the glass ceiling became less visible, but it existed. Palestinians, if you tell people around the world that there are cities in Israel and there are settlements in Israel, not in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, where Palestinians are not allowed to live in, people don't believe you, because we're talking about Israeli citizens. They cannot live in exclusively Jewish places. They are very limited in the land they can buy, because most of the land of Israel belongs to the Jewish National Fund that is not allowed to sell land to non-Jews. They are discriminated in budgets. The police treats them very differently from the way it treats Jews. The legal system treats them very differently. So it is true that they can be elected to the Knesset and elect to the Knesset, but their members of the Knesset are really not calculated, they're not factored into pursuit of policies, which matters. So they are actually used by Israel to beautify the Israeli experience by saying, what do you want? They can be in the Knesset, but in practice they are not really part of what in political science we call the common good in Republican terms. They're not part of the common good. They're not part of the common people. They are outside of it. They are outside. When Israelis talk about a state and a people, it does not include the Palestinians. And the situation is getting worse. If it really gets worse by the day. First of all, through legal system. By 2018, all the practices against them that were de facto are now de jure. They became laws. So that's far worse. Secondly, Israel is now using a different tactic that never used before. It allows criminal gangs to run the life of the Palestinians in Israel. These criminal gangs are not stopped by the police. They are very heavily armed, and they terrorize. These are Palestinians who terrorize the Palestinian societies. I think the idea is to make life impossible for the Palestinians in Israel so that they would leave. And in fact, unfortunately, a lot of them did leave. So this is a very unique combination of apartheid that is imposed on them. This is such a big mistake, because this is a community that has a human capital that would benefit a future Israel and Palestine, whatever we will call it, and it would benefit the Arab world as a whole. This is really a unique group of people. Anybody who met them and read them understands this. And they are the most democratic group, not in the Arab world. I think they are the most democratic group in the world. They really believe in democracy like nobody. I think most people lost a lot of confidence in democracy. They are the ones who are craving for a democratic state. So I think we should talk about them, with them, about them. And I would say finally, my last sentence, they took a strategic decision, which I understand, not to be involved in Palestinian politics, only in Israeli politics. I think that one of the things that can contribute to a better future, if they would play much less in the Israeli political field and begin to play more significantly in the Palestinian political field.
Well, Professor Ilan, thank you very much. I once came up with the image that told me what happens to the Palestinians. I said that Palestinians speak against the wind because nobody seems to listen to them.
Right.
And now, these days, we are living times of an unacceptable silence when the world is watching the genocide that is taking place. So, in these circumstances, in both circumstances, your voice is such a precious gift to us all.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for speaking to us and for continuing to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Thank you
very much,
Salen,
both.
for accepting and for having this wonderful interview today.
Thank you,
And
both.
thank you, Ilan, always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
Obrigado.
Thank you.
Obrigado.
Obrigado.